Boys and Ghouls film review. I'm your host, Sarah Stephenson, and this is my co-host, Mike Stephenson.
Hi everybody.
And tonight we review the sequel, the ever-popular Psycho 2, that was made in 1983.
Very good. Hey. Actually, I've always liked the Psycho franchise. It's the first one, obviously made by Alfred Hitchcock, but obviously he passed away sometime in between the 60s and 1980. So we had a man come along to take his place as director. His name is Richard Franklin. Now, Richard Franklin is an Australian director, and he used to be a student of Alfred Hitchcock, and they hired him to direct it for whatever reason. But this was Franklin's first American feature film. Isn't that lovely?
Well, who stars in this film, Mike?
I'm glad you asked that question. Now, Anthony Perkins comes back as Norman Bates. Now, that's really good because this movie has been done about 20 years after the Psycho 1, and Norman Bates, the character, was supposed to be in the insane asylum for about 20 years. So it really works out good that you got the same actor and he's 20 years older. So it really works for continuity, and he is Norman Bates to me.
Yeah.
Now wait a minute, Vera Miles. Now she was what do you call it? What was it? The first movie, Buglug's sister.
Leila Crane.
She was Lila.
Lila Crane.
She's Marion Crane's sister. So Marion obviously died in the first movie, but Lila comes back as more of an antagonist in this movie.
As per usual.
A bit of a role reversal for everybody here, which is great.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute.
And by the way, guys, she kind of, unlike in the first movie, in this one she's named Lila Loomis, who most likely have married Sam in her life.
Yeah, so Sam and her developed a relationship after Marion's untimely demise. Anyway, I was rolling on who the stars were.
Okay, go on.
Now, Meg Tilly plays Mary Loomis, but she goes by the name of Mary Samuels because she's doing a covert operation trying to help a mum drive Norman Bates mad. You know, he was halfway there anyway. But anyway.
Incidentally, before we go on, in this first Psycho movie, Marion Crane, she went under the alias when she was writing in the Bates Motel book.
Samuels.
She put herself as Maria Samuels.
Was it Maria or Mary?
Mary or Marie.
Whatever, Mary
Samuels.
Yes, she used the last name Samuels.
Yeah, so
interesting.
it's an interesting how many things we catch between both movies.
Well,
here.
I could take this one step further. You mentioned something about it. Was it Halloween or something, or one of the movies?
I mentioned it that the producer, who is named Mr. Green, originally suggested Jamie Lee Curtis to play Mary Loomis due to being the daughter of Janet Lee's and having success with the Halloween movie.
Yeah, and the funny thing in the Halloween movie, the doctor's name was Loomis. Gee, there's no imagination here, is there, folks? Now, anyway, I was going through the actors here.
Okay,
so Meg
go
Tilly
on.
was playing Mary Loomis, using the name Samuels. Now, Robert Loggia, he plays the Doctor, and he's been a few. Was he in that vampire movie we saw where that lady was killing off the gangsters? Was that him, Robert Loggia?
That could be him.
Yeah, that one. Yeah,
but I might have to go back and
gets around.
rehash. Oh, by the way, guys, I want to make a correction from our last podcast before we go on. That Mike was right about the trailer in the first Psycho movie.
Yeah.
So I was right, he was wrong.
Yeah.
So let's move on.
Yeah. For those who didn't hear the Psycho one, the trailer for Psycho 1 had a brief clip of the shower, which wasn't taken out of the movie. It was done a standalone shot. Yes. Now, the lady who played Marion Crane was not available, so they used the other lady, which was Vera Miles, to do a short couple of seconds in the shower. No one picked up on it because it's only about half a second to 1 second, and then the word psycho flashes across the screen. So you don't actually get a good chance to see her face. But yeah, Vera Miles played the lady in the shower for the trailer.
Yes. So sorry, guys, if I didn't take notice of that sort of thing.
So yeah, I go in with this funny little bits, here and there. And,
Yeah. So who's our next person on the list?
I'm not going to go through a list of the rest of the people because they're only bit players. But there's a lady called Claudia Breyer. She plays Emma Spool, who works at the diner, and she becomes a very integral part of the story as it develops.
A key part, or a mysterious key part to this movie.
Yeah, keeping it all in the family, so to speak. Hey.
Yes, so to speak. She's right. Yes.
Anyway, carry on.
And
sorry.
as a maybe not a very big role, but a very particular, interesting part to the story is that Anthony Perkins' younger son is playing in this movie too.
Osgood, wasn't it? Osgood, he plays a very, very quick cameo thing in Reflection.
Perkins.
Now, before I go on, when they wrote the storyline for this, they got permission from Alfred Hitchcock's daughter to make the sequel, and she was very happy. She thought that her father would really appreciate people doing that in honor of him. So isn't that lovely?
So that's great.
Yeah, and she was the lady who played the secretary in the first movie.
Yeah, well, it's a nice thought.
Yeah,
it's nice to think that they still talk to Hitch here and there, or even if it's
his daughter Hitch.
Yeah. Yes, and another thing I ought to tell you guys that at this time, before this movie was released, Robert Bloch, the guy who originally wrote the book,
first book, yeah.
he wrote 2 separate sequels to Psycho,
in book form.
In book form, and the producers or the directors at the time probably didn't really snap at the idea. They didn't like his book, so they wrote their own film script, their own screenplay. So they weren't really thrilled.
And I don't think Robert Bloch was too impressed. He wouldn't have got the royalties.
Yes, and of course the book wasn't a smash as like its first one.
Well, yeah, the first book was really good, but then when you write a good book and then you try to milk it for something, but it was 20 years later he wrote the second book. People's taste had changed.
True.
He would have been better off writing Psycho 2 a couple of years later. Yeah, well,
I would have thought he would have written it probably a year or 2 after he finished writing that book.
Well, you think so? And released it, well, while the people were still talking about Psycho, and then to me, after 20 years later, people say, I'm reading other things. They're reading other authors, so whatever.
I don't know.
Anyway, carry on. Now, do you want to talk about the plot, my dear?
Yes, I will, Michael.
Okay.
So
Sarah.
So the story takes place 22 years, and Norman Bates is getting uninstalled. Well, getting
out time.
Getting out of the mental institution, but a lot of people protest about it, especially Leila Loomis refusing. Lila Loomis isn't clinging to the idea, and she's like putting together petitions and lists telling people that we have a petition advising everyone to keep him in the institute
forever
and ever.
Now, Lila Loomis in the first movie was a nice lady, a bit like a victim, like her sister was. In this movie, 20 years later, it's become a bitter, twisted lady who's got a not hidden agenda, but she's often her own, what do you call it?
Delusions?
Well, she wants to make sure Norman Bates is not let out to hurt anybody anymore, but the legal side of it says, well, he wasn't accused of murder, he was criminally insane, he wasn't responsible for his actions, he's now cured, and he's been let out because he's no longer deemed to be a threat to society.
Yeah, but
that's not good.
Pretty much it.
Yeah,
and she doesn't see it that way, obviously.
No, she's just a bit of twisted old woman now. 20 years later.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, she did marry Sam, but Sam's not here because he wasn't available, so they wrote him out and said he's dead. Yeah. So there.
Yeah. So that's his character gone from the story.
Yeah, and no one killed him.
Yeah. So anyway, let me see. Oh yeah, Norman Bates, he gets released, and he goes back to his mother's place where the hotel is still standing, and it's still being an active hotel. If
And maybe a bit more of an adult type, drug, sex, and party
drug,
time.
sex, and rock and roll.
Well, why not?
Yeah, maybe
Gotta do it somewhere.
it's the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who's to say
And
who's...
the parents and the kids both use a motel. Yeah.
Yes, so
Maybe not at the same time.
yeah. Anyway, so Norman Bates goes back inside his old home. He's got a different job now in this movie. He's works at a
Diner.
a diner
Yeah.
of sorts. So he works there, to pay off the bills
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
and whatever. So he's all living it up in his mother's house.
Well, living it up. Well, living there.
Living
Just
there.
Existing there.
And in one scene, we see when his psychiatrist guy leaves him alone, we see him find a letter a little note from his mum, and he hears some weird noises hinting that his mum was there, and we see a bit of a sort of a reflection of Ozzy, his
His
son,
son, Oz.
portraying him when he was a younger Norman Bates.
Yeah, about 12 or something, or 13
Yeah,
or something.
so in the scene we see him when he was a child.
Yeah, but Norman's mind's playing a few tricks on him at this point in time, because it's his first time back in the house after all the things happened 20 years ago. So it would be a major shock to the system.
And you hear his mother's voice talking about how she poisoned his tea, yada yada yada.
I'll get you a little... Yeah, whatever, yeah.
Yes.
Hey, by the way, the lady who did the voice for Mum in the first movie was also the lady who did the voice in the second movie.
Yeah, so she's come back to reoccur to
reprise her role as well.
reprise her role as Norman's mum of sorts.
In the voice.
Yes. So the next day, Norman's at the not the next day, the same day in the afternoon. He goes to the
Cafe,
the diner, and he starts working there, and he meets Mary Loomis the first time.
Well, Mary Samuels Loomis, whatever you want to say.
Yes.
Because he's actually there's a few phone calls which go on with a boyfriend and different things during the show. We believe that she's actually talking to her mother.
Yeah.
Because they were very closely working on Norman during this movie, as will be told by Sarah in a moment. But
Yeah. Throughout the story, we hear her say, "No, mum, no, or yes, no, all that stuff," and we hear her say, other people's names in this when she's talking on the phone, but we don't hear her. We don't know for sure what the conversation between her mother and her.
She was planted. She only started the diner about 4 days or so before Norman got there. So they were obviously aware that he was coming to work there, and she got a job there.
Yeah.
Because Mum organised it.
Yeah, something about that. Wasn't she there for 5 weeks or 5 days?
No, 4 or 5 days.
4 or 5 days.
So they knew the job had been organised for Norman to be there, so they made sure she was there.
Yeah, so
they could start working on him.
Yeah, and of course Emma Spool is there, who's sort of working as a cashier, I think.
Yeah, cashier, sort of a nice little old lady behind the counter.
Yes, so she's working there too.
A mother type.
Yeah, hint, hint. Yes. So Norman gets on with Mary and even invites her back at his place to stay at the hotel.
Because he had nowhere to go.
Yes.
Break up for boyfriend, supposedly.
Yes. At one point, when there is the place is packed with a lot of drunk or over top high people at the hotel.
Oh yeah, at the motel. Yeah.
Yeah. So he invites her back to his house inside his place to stay the night for a bit.
Yeah, he was going to give her a room there, but the place was packed. Mr. Toomey, the manager who'd been put there by the state or whatever,
yes, roughly,
had been renting the rooms out by the hour, not the night or the week. So And Norman, he have a bit of a discussion, don't they?
Yeah, he told him he's going to be fired, yada yada, and says he must clear out his stuff and go, which he does eventually.
Yes.
But I won't get into that just yet.
So he gets rid of him. He said, "Don't let any more rooms out, Mister Toomey." Ah.
Yeah, and he keeps on going on that at least I rent out rooms. You kill your
Yeah,
clients,
they have a good
yada
time.
yada yada.
You kill them. That's a good time.
Yeah, it was really
Thrilling.
Yes.
Thrilling.
So
Yeah.
anyway, he goes back to his house. He prepares some sandwiches for him and Mary. Although he tries to look for cutlery. Now this is an interesting part to this story. While they were doing the reading the script in the scene, there was a moment when when Anthony was saying cutlery in the score in the scene, in the kitchen scene, and somehow the director Frankie loved it and thought he should definitely put that into the scene where he was
So what did he do?
when he was stuttering over cutlery.
He started over cutlery.
Yes.
Because he had cutlery,
Yeah.
like that, because like to show he's nervous.
Yeah.
And it felt good.
Yeah, so it kind of made him a little bit more of a nervous character.
Actually, that's one thing different in this movie. There was seeing a softer, gentler, tortured soul sort of thing out of Norton. A lot of pathos was going on for this movie for him.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, he even sees a very big sharp knife there that most likely may be the same knife that could have been used for the murders, or maybe there to continue plaguing him like a horrible nightmare.
Yeah.
Whoever left it will never know. So,
Well,
but somehow I
it
think
looked clean.
yeah,
Being washed.
but somehow Mary knew there was a very big sharp knife. So who knows? Maybe her or her mother may have put it there to further make his brain go fuzzy.
Well, yeah, it's sort of start playing. The idea is to work him down a bit and send him back to the nut house. I'm telling you this because that's the way the story's going to develop really quickly.
Somehow, when Mary is watching him holding the knife, I think she gets a little nervous. Like when she says Norman, like she's like worried he's got murder on his mind, or not really murder on his mind.
No,
he's just nervous.
The idea of having a carving knife in his hand brings back these
horrible memories.
Well, yeah, the memories have been taken away, but the feeling behind the memories, I suppose. Oh, I know I did these killings years ago, and I used a knife like this, and something in the back of his subconscious there is going, "Remember me?" Yeah, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yes, and of course she pretends that she's gonna phone a best friend to see if she can room for the night again. But she kind of uses the phone like three times in this when she's in the house.
Yeah.
And it leaves us to guess that she's getting nervous, or she's
actually phoning Mum. I'm sure she is.
I'm sure she is too.
Yeah, Mum's staying at a local motel in the local township.
Yeah, Fairville.
Fairvale or Fairville? Fairvale.
Yeah, Fairville. So anyway, they end up staying. She stays in the house, and the next morning they're back at the diner, and things are cooking well.
You're cooking at the diner. What a good
Yeah, and the motel owner or whatever, he's there. Manager. He comes there and he starts creating a little bit of tension between.
Yeah, he was drunk and stuff.
By Mary and Norman, and
he didn't love being sacked.
Yeah, and along the lines we see on one of the I don't know what it's called. What do you call that?
A little carousel where you put your meal orders.
Yeah, the carousel. Somehow one of the piece of notes that says that one of the notes there says that Mum is going to kill that girl that you just brought to my house. Yada yada yada.
Yeah. So who wrote it? We'll never know. Who put it up there? We'll never know. We have our suspicions.
Yes, I think it was Mary who put it there.
I think so too.
Because only waitresses have put the orders on there, and then they go.
Well, Lila wasn't there. The only one else who could have done it would have to be Mary.
Yes. So anyway, she while she's being pestered by that ex-manager guy, Norman gets the little note, and he thinks it was the manager who put it on the carousel.
Yeah, the ex-manager.
Yes,
But how could he? He never came near it.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but he wasn't thinking rationally, was he?
Yeah, and he gets nervous, and he leaves the diner, and
He quits that day,
well,
doesn't he?
quits or leaves. Yeah.
And he decides to take out the motel, run
Yes.
it again. Yeah.
So anyway, he comes back to the house, and of course Mary comes back to there. She says her piece, and even gives him some chocolate fudge.
Yeah, her auntie gave her something.
Yeah,
or something?
grandma.
Yeah,
Something.
grandma or something.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, somebody, a family member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, she says that is the offer to stay the night open still.
Yeah, he was really happy. And now, just bear in mind, there's no sexual stuff between Mary and Norman. It's like Norman needs a friend, and Mary is there to pretend to be a friend.
Yeah.
At least at this stage, anyway.
Yes, this is the stage of the game.
Yeah, but she still worked for Mother to help undermine his mental health.
Yeah, so the manager, he coming to the motel, yells obscenities to Norman, yada yada yada, and he begins to pack up his belongings, but somehow something really horrible happens.
Some figure wielding a knife goes whack 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 whack, and Mr. Toomey is no more.
Yeah, and he's disappeared.
Yeah, we don't see anything what happened after that, but we're all going, oh yeah, right, the swamp.
Yeah. So anyway, Norman is preparing the motel, planning a reopening, I think it was called. And
Reopening. He's closing it down for a little bit so he can repaint it and do things. Well, actually, that's another point too, just as an aside here, that the original building for the house was still there, but the motel buildings weren't there. So they had to rebuild them for this.
Yeah, it says the original house set was used, and the motel had to be reconstructed.
Yeah, because they didn't need it, and it would have only been a facade probably, so they had to reconstruct it to look like the old one. Mm-hmm. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, that's where people forget about the cost in movies. They've got to build sets a lot, and this one had to build a whole motel facade. And then had to outrig the inside of the building, do the sound stage, and get all the gear. So it adds up, time, money, everything else. So it's
true.
But anyway, irrespective, Norman's there painting away, nice canary yellow, crikey,
Yeah, very intense yellow.
You wouldn't miss it.
Oh yeah, but that's the point, Mike. I mean, considering that they're not living on a highway. This is an old highway.
Well, that's true.
And not many people go down that road.
You'll see it from the moon.
Yeah, most likely. So anyway, Norman is painting away. His psychiatrist comes by, checking up on him as per usual.
Yeah, he's a very nice guy. He's a very nice guy. I mean, if I was going to be mentally deranged, that's the sort of guy I'd like to help me out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he seemed like a nice man. So anyway, he introduces Mary to him, and she heads off down to the diner to do her diner thing.
Her shift, yeah.
Yeah, and while Norman's painting, he sees a figure in the window.
Yeah, surprised. Now, I'm a bit confused on this.
What's that?
Who was in the window?
I think it's Mary.
Well, Mary went to work.
I know, but she may have took a taxi back and hidden in the bushes and climbed into the root cellar and then head upstairs and then wear the outfit.
See, it has to be Lila. Because Lila didn't have a job. She was hanging around stuff.
Well, it's just that when Norman goes inside the place and he goes up to her room and in his mum's room and sees the place fixed up, and he goes up to the attic, and that's where we hear much later on in the story that Mary was disguised in the costume, and she was putting the taking everything, putting things
back
putting
out
things
the room
back.
again to make it look like it was empty.
So
again.
it couldn't be Lila because
but in the window. But you said Mary going to work, and then she's got a shift to keep at the cafe.
I know that, but she may have not had a shift that day. I mean, how does Norman keep track of her shifts? Is he keeping track? I don't know. So who's to say?
Whatever.
She may have had a day off, and she just came back
I'm going to work now.
early.
No, not.
Yeah, and just snuck in through the root cellar because they're back because the root cellar doors there's no lock on them.
That's round the back, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
no
you
one
couldn't
will
see it
know.
from the motel properly. Okay.
Yeah, leaving up to
Okay.
yes. Anyway, while Norman is up in the attic, he gets locked in there, and
Interested that one.
yes, and he tries to get out as much as he can, and then two sneaky kitties decide to go into the basement to play a bit of
Smoke a bit of dope and fool around, you know what kids
and
do.
play a bit of canasta while they're down there.
More like hide the sausage.
Yeah, so they go down there, smoke a bit of weed or whatever.
And do whatever.
And
I like the whatever better.
yeah, and the girl hears something, no duh.
Rattle, rattle, rattle.
And
someone's in the next room.
Yeah, and they're unaware that Norman the house is now got vacant or
Yeah, the kids
not
probably
vacant.
thought it was still vacant,
Yeah.
empty, and now they didn't know there was somebody living in it again. So,
So while they're getting it down to gritty, or not really getting down to it, they just hear noise, and the boy pokes his head out to see what that noise
and
was.
he sees a female figure out there,
Yes.
an older female.
Yes, and we see the huge knife that's probably as long as my.
Yeah, the old carving knife trick again.
Yes.
Yes.
And
yes,
while the
yes.
girl is getting scared, she decides to climb out of the little
the
window
that
there.
came in, and but there's some loose logs there, and she
Yes.
knocks a log.
Yes, now she's climbing out. The boy gets tackled by the old lady,
bird, yeah.
and he stabs her off screen.
He stabbed.
She
Stabs
stabs him off
and the little
screen.
girl gets through the window, goes running off the police. Yeah, the sheriff, whatever. Yeah.
And of course, Mary soon arrives, supposedly. And
Oh, that's right. She was there. She must have been there. Yeah. Because
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so she's there, and she kind of unlocks the attic, door, letting Norman out, and says that the door was not locked. Who's she kidding?
There's no key.
There's no key.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah.
And it's probably one of those doors that just gets locked from the outside.
Well, yeah, both sides. But,
Well, both
he had no key on the inside.
Yeah,
and someone
true.
locked him in on the outside. And
Yeah.
poor little Norman.
Yeah, and then the sheriff arrives, and he says this girl came up to them telling him that their boyfriend got killed. And he suspects Norman.
And
but
the sheriff has to look around.
yes.
And the place is clean, neat,
Yes.
tidy.
And
not
of
as thick as
And
right out
Mary
of place.
and Mary kind of made up a little bit of a lie,
Well,
telling him that they were just taking a walk in the park or something,
Well,
or in the woods.
she said Norman couldn't have done anything wrong because he was with me at the time. And
Creating an alibi for him,
yeah,
if that's
and
so.
that was really weird initially, but this is where Mary's changing her feelings towards Norman. Because she feels like hey, there's somebody else involved here, and she's starting to feel sorry for Norman. So she's starting to change, and she's not necessarily on her mother's side now.
Yeah, so she even meets up with her mother, and even at the hotel where she asks her why hasn't Norman been arrested yet, yada yada.
With the boy's death.
Yeah, she doesn't really care if Norman didn't do it or
Or
not at
somebody
this
else did
point.
it. Who cares?
Yeah.
She's just a bitter, twisted old lady.
Yeah, so she's not really concerned that it could be done by someone else, the poor girl's boyfriend or poor parents of the boy. I mean, I'd much rather have a person who may likely have done the job, not the other way
Yeah, but they had
around.
a hidden agenda. They wanted him back in a nut house.
True.
Yeah, for all the other loonies.
Yes. So anyway, she tells her mother that it couldn't be Norman because he was in the attic for 2 hours.
And mother says, "Who cares?"
Yes, and he couldn't.
Yeah.
And she was down in the mother's room cleaning up the odds and ends.
And making it look like it was an abandoned room again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Actually, that's one thing that bugs me.
what's that?
Right. Now she made the room up to look exactly like it was 20 years ago. Mary wasn't even born 20 years ago.
Well,
How would you know what the room looked like?
I don't know. Maybe her mother kind of gave her
Photographs?
instructions. Maybe it gave her instructions on how the room looked like. Maybe it gave. I mean, she was observing everything in the room. Like she even seen those little golden hands that were on the dresser.
Yeah, they were actually at the gunnery source though, out of some memorabilia and stuff. They still had a few things left though
Yeah.
from the old
So
days
she
in the
might have
archives, so
she
that
might
was
have
handy.
got her she kind of probably trained her daughter to know where in everything is in the room, so she get a bit of an idea of where to
Where to put things.
things and make it look like it still looks like it did back in the 1960s.
Exactly.
To make it a little bit more
Okay,
interesting.
carry on.
Yeah. So
Anyway.
anyway, let me see who else gets killed off in this movie.
Everyone, no, the police come there and check the place, can't find anything, and she gives the alibi.
Yeah. And
Now, what happens is, does the psychiatrist guy come back now, or they get called down to the swamp?
I think that Lila Loomis. So she even goes to the sheriff guys to tell them, why haven't you drained the swamp? That was where the victims were put in there last time. Why didn't you drain the swamps? All that stuff. She's all bent out of shape when I think about that movie.
Yeah, but then it gets on to the next part. They go to the swamp, don't they?
Yeah, they do eventually.
Or shortly thereafter.
Yeah, at first, Norma's confused and he's a little worried he's turning bad again or turning worse again. And of course, Mary is trying to her absolute hardest to not believe it. Anyway,
they start draining the swamp.
Yeah, they do.
Not draining the swamp, dredging the swamp,
yes.
looking for a vehicle which could belong to the missing manager. And guess what they find?
Yes.
A car which belongs to the missing manager.
Yeah, and before that, I think the psychiatrist tells Norman that Mary is related to Lila.
Her real
Loomis.
name is Loomis.
Yes. So she kind of
Poor Norman. He thought he had a girlfriend there for a minute.
Yeah, but she does like him still.
She does. She's softening towards him. She's seeing the wrongs that her mother is doing.
Yeah, there was
doesn't
even
like it.
Yeah, there was even a scene where Norman decides to protect Mary by having her secured in his old room,
and he's standing around there for carving knives. Like no one's going to get you. Not while I'm here. Pretty much. Yeah. So he didn't want anything to happen to her because he genuinely was developing feelings for her.
Yeah.
And I think at this point she was worried about him. Being sent crazy by Mummy dear. So everything's coming to a bit of a boil now.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and Norman tries to tell her that Mary smells like the toasted sandwiches that his mum used to do for him when he was a little kid.
Well, if I had a girl who smelled like a toasted sandwich, I'd get another girlfriend. A perfume would be nice.
Yes, well, anyway.
Some deodorant, perhaps?
Yeah, even though Mary says that he tries to think about the good things about his mum, but he says he can't because all those good memories have been wiped away.
Yeah, all that left was the toasted sandwiches or whatever they were,
Yeah, all the good things he remembers of his mother were gone.
Now, he tried to forget, I think he mentioned at some stage toasted cheese sandwiches or something or
toasted
other.
cheese sandwiches.
But when he makes a sandwich, it looks like it's ham and cheese, just as a...
Yeah, well, maybe he can make more than just toasted cheese sandwich.
Well, he makes a nice ham and cheese sandwich. I didn't see any tomatoes. He should keep his veggies up. It's good for you.
Yeah, so anyway, Norman suspects that now that more than suspect that it's his actual mother doing the killings and everything.
Yeah, but
even though everyone else is saying it can't be your mother, she's dead.
She snuffed it. We proved it 20 years ago.
Yeah, and he somehow, I don't know if those phone is really working or not in this scene, but somehow he starts hearing his mother's on the other end.
I've got a funny feeling in the beginning. Well, the phone's ringing. Someone's phoning him. I reckon it's another person whose name will be revealed later is phoning him and saying, "I'm your mother."
Yeah.
And he's believing it because there's something in the back of his mind wants to believe his mother is still alive.
That's true. So anyway, Lila goes back to the house eventually, and she tries to do one last scare, pretend to be Mrs. Bates by going into the basement, finding the carving knife and a wig and an old dress that's hid underneath a bit of an old brick or
Yeah, a loose paving stone in the bottom of the cellar
whatever.
floor. But while she's there getting her stuff out,
Yeah, and guess what else? She gets a mouthful.
yeah, Mother, we believe, is alive and well, and she gets a
Mouthful.
carving knife straight through her mouth as she's yelling. What a great effect!
What I say before, a mouthful.
She got a mouthful, okay. And anyway.
Yeah, well, I thought that one, apart from the boy getting killed, off screen, that one is very graphic. But I was kind of
That was good. That was good. Good prosthetics and everything.
Yeah,
It looked great.
Yeah, the director Richard, he was trying his absolute hardest to try to maintain the Alfred Hitchcock way
flavour.
about it.
Yeah, and anyway, the body gets hidden. Now, that body, we don't see it, but the body gets hidden under a big pile of coal next to the furnace for the home heating. Now, about the same time, the psychiatrist shows up, and he's inside the house upstairs, and he sees Mary there, and she's dressed up, isn't she?
Yes, she kind of, while Norman's on the phone with his supposedly mother and all that stuff, or actually at the time he was actually on the phone with a psychiatrist, but he starts talking to his mother, at the same time in this conversation.
Yeah, the psychiatrist phones in from the motel just down at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah.
Hey, they're doing it. He said, "Yes, Mother." Whoops, he's cracked. He's hearing his mother, not what the psychiatrist is saying.
So anyway, while this is happening, Mary goes down to the basement, gets the gear, and she tries to talk to Norman
saying, "Look, I am your mother. If I'm here, you can't be talking to me on the phone."
Yes.
So he's getting really twisted here. He's a mother on the phone, his mother standing in front of him. This is getting too hard even for old Norman.
Yeah, so while he's talking on the phone with her, she tries desperately to go. She goes upstairs, tries to the other phone, and tries to get him to hang up or whatever.
Yeah.
And while she's doing that, Norman does eventually disappear out of shot.
But at the same time, the psychiatrist walks up behind her.
Behind what's the staircase?
Oh, there's a rear staircase inside the building.
Yeah, so he appears behind her, comes close to tackling her, but then she shoots him a couple times with the she uses
she had a carving knife in her hand.
she uses a carving knife,
and he gets a chest full, isn't it?
Yes.
And he falls over the balustrade and hits the floor with the knife inside of him or something rather than and rams the knife straight through him, comes out of his back. What a great effect.
Yeah, and she goes downstairs, and Norman sees the dead body and keeps calling her mother, why'd you do this, mother? And she keeps on using the knife, stabbing him in the hands, maybe in the stomach,
in his body, in his hands and whatever.
Shoulder.
And he tries to grab the knife off and it cuts through his hands. And
he kept saying, I'm not going to hurt you, mother.
I'm going to look after you, mother. He's getting really angry.
And she soon discovers her dead remains of her mother.
Yeah, downstairs underneath the coal pile because the coal moves a bit and she sees Mother's face and she thinks, oh right, Norman's killed my mother.
Yeah, and
Norman didn't do anything.
Yeah, in fact. Anyway, suddenly the sheriff appears and bam, Mary is shot dead.
Because they think Mary's attacking poor old Norman. Norman's there, is about dead of being on stab wounds, and she's dressed up as the mother and a wig and the carving knife.
Yeah.
And what are the police supposed to think?
Yeah. So we fade in on the sheriff's department.
The office.
And Norman is stitched up, all right.
His hands,
probably.
He looks like a mummy, doesn't he?
Yeah, something like that. So anyway, the sheriff explains the situation to the reporters, the media, and tell them that it was Mary and her mother who was creating the whole scenario.
Yeah, they were trying to drive Norman crazy.
Yes, and it did.
And it got out of control, and they started fighting between themselves, and lo and behold, that's what happened.
Yeah, there was even a witness that was at Mrs. Loomis's hotel, where she was arguing with her daughter, and her daughter was saying that if you do try anything, I'll warn you. you'll regret all that stuff.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. Yeah, they're threatening each other, and
Yeah, so-
Lila was adamant she was going to take care of Norman, and Mary was going to make sure Mum didn't. So yeah.
Yeah, so she they kind of end up with an unreliable witness.
Well, reliable for the police.
Reliable to the police, but not to them. It turns out.
But anyway, irrespective, at this point in time, he said, I'll read all my reports. So pretty much reports going to say Lila and Mary killed all the people.
Yes, so.
Trying to send Norman mad. And there's a poor old Norman, I'll take you home now.
Yeah,
And then,
he
and
goes
the police,
back.
Yeah, police guy drives him back home. And
Yeah.
everything's normal again. Ish.
Anyway, he comes back to his rooms and he's fixed the last remaining things around his house, getting some coal inside the furnace, and
Goes up the kitchen.
and goes up to the kitchen, serves himself a nice cheese
Now,
and
it's
sandwich.
interesting. He sets 2 plates at the table, one for himself and one for somebody else.
Ooh. Yes.
No one picks up on it straight away. I didn't the first time I saw the movie.
Yes, and anyway, an unknown woman comes
A silhouette.
out of the near the house of
Yeah.
Norman's house.
Yeah, dressed like his mother used to be.
Yes, and as she comes to the back and knocks on the
There's
door.
a rap tapping on my chamber door.
Yes.
Edgar Allan Poe should have used that, hey.
Well,
he
it's
probably
too
did.
late. It's already used. So anyway, it turns out it's Emma Spool.
The lady from the cafe.
Yeah,
Well,
and Norman invites her in, saying he's just having dinner, just some cheese and milk and all that stuff.
And she looks at the plate, says, "Will you expect me?" He says, "I was expecting somebody."
Sure.
She wasn't sure who, though.
So
yeah.
she says that she's not hungry, but Norman says he'll prepare her some
A nice cup
coffee.
of tea or something, or a cup of
Yes.
tea coffee. Yeah.
And while he's preparing it, he asks her flat out, "Are you really my mother?" And she says, "Does Emma Spool, does that ring a bell?" and stuff. And he says, "Should it?" He says Spool was his mother's maiden name, meaning before she got married.
Yeah. And so she was a sister of his dead mother. And then she puts a story up at this point that she was actually Norman's mother, but she had Norman out of wedlock and she wasn't quite right. And she went to a nut house and Mrs. Bates, her sister, took custody of the child when he was 1 year old or something like that and raised Norman as her own.
Yes.
But there's a problem here.
What's that?
Why her name, Mrs. Bates, was Norma. The baby would have already had a name. Why would it be called Norman? So that's where the thing. Her sister wouldn't have called him Norman.
No kidding. So anyway, she drinks.
Mrs. Spool's crazy,
so Mrs.
isn't it?
Spool drinks the tea, and while she's drinking it, she suddenly goes into a bit of a slight
It sounds a bit funny, and she gets a sore head when Norman hits him for his big shovel, his big coal shovel thing. Yeah.
Yes, and he slowly whistles and pulls the blinds over the windows, and he slowly picks her up and takes her to his mum's room.
Yeah, and he starts talking to her, saying, "Yeah, you're very tight, mother. I'll take you upstairs and put you to bed, and you've had a very tiring day." And you know, he's starting to go back to the old Norman that we all know and love.
Yes, or something like that. Yeah, so he goes back downstairs. We see him staring up at his house.
The voice comes back though.
Yes, the voice does.
Yes, that mother's voice is talking to him again. He's having a two-way conversation, and then he goes downstairs, and you're seeing in that ubiquitous sort of stance outside the house on the stairs there, of his silhouette against the house, and that became the poster for the movie.
Cool.
And the Christmas card. Well, yeah, but there's a story about that. They at that point when they made that movie, they got that shot and they made Christmas cards up for the staff. And they're going to make up a poster. They couldn't find a suitable image, so they used that image, which they used for the Christmas cards, to make the poster. You didn't know that, did you? No. But that's great. Remember, a guy that the way you stand there, one leg straight, one slightly bent, looking up at the sky or something rather, and you have the mansion, the old house behind him. That's a great shot, and why not use it?
Yes. Yeah, so that's the
Merry Christmas, folks.
So that's the end of the movie. Until next time.
That part. So yeah, that was a top ending. Alfred Hitchcock would not have been upset with that movie.
He
Because
would have been proud.
I collect movies,
Mhm.
and I've seen a lot of old movies.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of film noir, and that fits into that sort of category, the original
Mm.
Psycho movie. This would be, let's say, post-film noir period sort of stuff, and it followed the same general feeling that you get when you're watching those old movies, but slightly modernised. The critics were mixed. Some critics said, "Hey, it's great. This is going to be another cult movie." Some guys said, "I didn't like it because the role reversals. You know, Lila Loomis was a nice lady in the beginning, in the first movie, became a nasty lady in the second movie." There were so many mixed reviews on it,
Mm.
but generally the reviews were positive.
Yeah, true. And anyway,
Yeah,
not to mention, she was always a bitter woman sometimes in
she
this
was.
movie.
She's after Norman all the time. Even the first movie, he killed my. Well, did he kill or was just mentally deranged?
Yeah,
It wasn't, but she was just a nasty person.
yeah,
She was out for blood in the first movie,
yeah,
but in a softer way.
yeah. And just
Yeah.
so you guys know, if you haven't seen the movie, um, all through this movie, Norman he never killed anyone except for this son, Emma Spool.
Yeah, his new mummy.
Emma Spool, it turned out she was the one going around killing people, apart from Mary, who killed the psychiatrist guy.
Mm,
That was
yeah, so everyone was getting. Actually, it's quite funny. I was reading
Weird.
something that Anthony Perkins wasn't going to reprise the role.
What do you mean, Mike?
He didn't. He wasn't going to be in Psycho 2.
Ooh.
They asked him about it. Oh, I don't know. Blah 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 blah. Then read the script and he changed his mind. But if he didn't do it, they're going to put Christopher Walken in there.
Ooh.
He's not too bad. I
Yeah.
like him. He could take a sinister role, but I don't think it would have been the same.
Yeah, and I can imagine people's reactions.
Yeah, I mean, everyone, to me, it's sort of like watching a Harry Potter movie. You see, Harry Potter, he was in 7 movies. Daniel Radcliffe is Harry Potter. You see, it changes a person over. No longer it's Harry Potter. It's a movie about a boy called Harry Potter. When you got someone you can identify with, and it's the same person in the movies. It's like Star Trek. The movies, they had the same people all the time. You say, oh, these are people in Star Trek. Yeah, there's Captain Kirk, and there's so and so. All the same people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, having the same character brings that sense of reality and an extended continuity through the sequels. Yeah, and that's my belief anyway.
Yeah. Another thing I should tell you guys about it, that the composer Jerry Goldsmith, who had written a musical theme for Norman Bates, that the director Frank didn't rejected the themes, ended up the theme was rejected.
And used another movie.
And then used in Twilight Zone, the movie that was made in 1983.
Yeah, well, Sewell. But he knew the other guy, that guy, didn't he? He knew the Bernard guy. He did the film scores for the previous movie.
Yeah.
He knew that Bernard. What's his name? Bernard Summingman, Hammond, whatever. Yeah, whatever his name is. Yeah, he actually knew him, and I think they actually collaborated sometimes. So so it's interesting how it all comes together, folks.
There was some good music here, lights sort of music here, not so dark type music that showed a bit of a
Well, that was different to the
calm
first movie,
side
wasn't
to
it?
Norman Bates in the second movie.
Yeah, because the first movie didn't have a lot of music, did it?
No, it only had the
Suspense music
the
stuff.
suspenseful
And
that and the highway music where
yeah, that
all
sort
that
of
stuff.
yeah, that sort of stuff. But didn't I say a lot of old movies didn't use a lot of music all the time? But and the music for the ambience, is it the word Atmos?
Atmos.
Was starting to come in a bit more, and there's a bit more background music and stuff to help create a mood or a feeling, and that was more noticeable in the second movie. Yes, I must admit. Yes, a bit of Atmos is really good.
Yeah, so I know this is going to be a bit of pain to you, Mike, but I'm going to say this to the audience now.
Don't talk too much about Robert Bloch.
Okay, well, I am. Okay.
A little bit about Robert Bloch.
Well, I just want to let people know who have either purchased the book or thinking about purchasing the book, the sequel book, just so you know. It was, seeing as I told you guys earlier, that the book is very different from the sequel to Psycho. So the plot in the book is very different. than the feature. It has Norman Bates escape from the mental institute and travels to Hollywood, California to stop the production of a film based on his life. Universal Studio was reported upset by Block's take on the horror film industry, and this led to the development of the 1983 film sequel.
Okay.
And not to mention, he did 2 different sequels to Psycho, just so you know. This one was the one I told you about just now, and the other one is about some people reconstructing the Bates Motel, but somehow a lot of horror stuff starts happening in that one too.
Okay.
And as I said before, both books got bad media reviews on them.
Yeah, so the film script was good. Now, I'm going to throw a bit of trivia in here.
Okay, good.
During this movie, before Dr. Buglugs dies, he's trailing Lila Loomis. And when he's trailing her from that motel, that is the same streetscape that was in Back to the Future. They used the same set.
Cool.
So it was the same, I think it was called Courthouse Square.
Wow.
In Back to the Future movie, and that was the same film set they used for both those movies. Now, another point I think you raised before about Alfred Hitchcock's silhouette when they walked into Norman's room early in the movie.
Yeah.
It had a shadow of
25 minutes into the film was when Mary and Norman first go into Norman's mother's room. Before they turned on the light on, you can see the Alfred Hitchcock silhouette on the wall on the right.
Now,
far right.
The guys who put this movie together, the writer and director, wanted to make this a tribute to Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock used to do a very, very quick cameo in all of his movies. He'd be standing there, looking through a window or getting on a bus or doing something or walking out of a doorway. And obviously he was dead, so they put this sort of a shadow of him on the corner of the screen.
Bear with me. It makes me think of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. You know, every
that
time
was a good TV show.
where he makes a shadow.
Some people think that was that took him down a bit in the eyes of the film production companies before he did Psycho. Oh, you sold out, you're doing TV now.
Oh, gosh.
And actually, going back to that, when he did Psycho, he used his film crew from the TV show to do the filming for the film. Because he'd had these guys already he knew, and doing TV, you got to work faster and sometimes harder in a shorter period of time because you're doing a weekly sort of thing. So he got those guys out, and I think with that crew, I think he saved a bit of money by getting it done a little bit faster. Yeah.
Well, at least they did. They didn't rush it. They kind of got a really good project by the end of the.
They did, yeah.
By the end of.
So the first movie and the second movie do work together. As far, this new director and the screenwriter, I think they captured the spirit of Hitchcock.
Yeah, they did. I do think it was really extraordinary that he was able to capture it, and he met him as a student too, which makes it even more that he got a good inside look into how to make the story believable in his mind and make it look like something that Hitchcock would have made, maybe.
You see, another point too. One of the critics said, "Oh, yeah, it didn't like the changes, like in Lila changed." But I mean, 20 years later, we're not all the same.
Yeah.
We become creatures. We get moulded by what happens to us. She changed because she was a bitter, nasty lady because her sister was killed by a nutcase. So that affected her mentally in her own way.
Yes.
So she became a little bit mentally deranged as well as Norman. While Norman was getting better, she was
becoming more.
She was going weird.
Yeah, meaning she didn't like the fact that her sister's murderer
was going to
be let loose.
But
even though he was taken to an
no matter what she said, the courts weren't going to listen to her. So he's done his time. He was never accused of murdering. He was accused of being mentally unsound.
Yeah, and not to mention an institute is not a prison.
Yeah, and he did 20 years, and he was safe to go back and enter the community. And Lila said, well, how about all the people who got affected by him killing people and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, where are they?
She got 700 signatures on a petition. If she had several thousand signatures, it wouldn't have made any difference because the court had made its ruling.
Yeah.
She was just bitter and she wanted her own way.
I wonder, one thing that comes to mind is if she got a petition and everything, why can those people that got them signed that petition, why didn't they come down to
the courthouse?
Say their own say that
exactly.
Instead of just leave it up to Lila to be the spokesperson.
So she'd gone around and talked to people, I'll sign it, yeah, she'd be right.
Because
they didn't really care. They probably signed to get rid of her.
Yeah, they probably just said, I want to get on with my life, so why don't you go away? I'll sign it as long as you go away, and so I can live my life.
Leave me alone. Yeah, and so they probably did. So she was the only one who had the issue, probably.
Yeah, most of them may not have moved on.
And even the daughter said, I followed you, I went to all your meetings, I did whatever, blah, 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 blah. And enough's enough, mother, leave the guy alone. And she thought her daughter had sold out.
Yeah, true.
When her daughter, Meg Tilly, was being rational about it.
Yeah.
So
but
Lila
then again,
was going crazy.
She never knew her aunt, so there's no point in living for the dead. I think that's what she said. She said she doesn't want to live for dead people anymore.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, people die all the time, and people do have to get forgiven sometimes.
Yeah, true.
If it was Norman was not in control.
Yeah.
It wasn't his fault.
Yeah, I often feel the same way about. I know this is a different subject, but I feel the same thing about Michael Jackson. I mean, I don't blame him for what he did, but he may have he may have had he had a bit of a past with his father, who may have caused him to have these things happen to him and caused it to other people to happen. So it's not his fault that
I wouldn't go too much about Michael Jackson. We don't know his full mental state. Wait a minute.
But a lot of people, scientists, would often tell you that it usually depends on your upbringing or...
Well, that's it. Michael Jackson became a creature of his life.
Yeah.
He started off in the media, music industry when he was probably at 6 or something or other. 6 or 7. He was only a little child in front of the Jackson 5. He didn't have a normal childhood. His father was reported to have been said to him at some stage, I'm not your father, I'm your manager.
Yeah.
So he didn't have his father's support. He didn't have it. So Michael Jackson may have gone a little bit weird. Wacko Jacko, they called him, but I don't think he's wacko. I think he was just a sad man who had a few problems there.
Yeah.
And I really don't believe anything naughty. I think if that was the case, if everyone thought he was bad, why did they send their kids over to him to play with?
Yeah.
So maybe there's a lot to be said about the people and their kids, and not so much Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
But this isn't about Michael Jackson. This is about Psycho. Enough about Michael Jackson.
So enough about him. So, how do you rate this movie, Mike?
Look, I'm a Hitchcock fan. I'm a film noir fan. This isn't quite film noir. The Psycho one was, but I think it really captured the Hitchcock spirit. It wasn't Hitchcock, but it was close enough to me for me to like it, and it's got to be like, it's a 9.5 out of 10. 9.5. How's that?
Yeah, I think I give it I think I like to give it 10 out of 10.
Oh, you're a generous lady. Yeah, no.
Well,
I wouldn't give it 10. I wouldn't give it 10, but I see it really wasn't Hitchcock. It was done as a tribute.
Yeah,
so it wasn't. I'm not saying it wasn't original, but there was a tribute to somebody. To me, they're taking somebody else's idea and running with it.
Yeah.
That's why I took off 0.5%.
I know. I just think
Yeah,
I just think that the film franchise has made a really good impression on everyone.
Oh yeah.
Despite those people you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
in your statement, it's just I feel like that it does offer a lot in the industry when I think about it.
I think it's a top movie, and actually one of the critics, some critics said it'd be another cult movie, and I think really it stands alone as a good movie by itself or part of the franchise. It's a damn good movie.
Yes.
If you like the first movie, this is like icing on the cake.
Yeah.
It complements the first movie.
Yeah. True.
Yep. And the third movie, which we'll probably be reviewing over the next week or two,
Yeah.
and the last movie, which was a retro one,
Yeah.
isn't it? Retro? What do you call it, retro? Yeah, it sort of goes back and tells the story.
Yeah, sort of
bit
a
and whatever,
flashback.
Yeah, flashbacks and stuff. Yeah,
Stuff.
we'll probably do both of those.
And if we're lucky, we'll see about trying to do the remake. If we,
Yeah,
if I can get Mike, if I can get Mike here to sit down and watch it with me.
The tribute remake isn't too bad, but to me it's a bit on the lame side. They did it word perfect and tried to copy it, and then they changed too many things. They just didn't get it right.
Yeah, it's better. I mean, I even looked at the date on it, and it said that the story takes place in 95, and when most of the clothing.
It was 60s and stuff.
Yeah, when we don't even wear this stuff. I mean, I don't think I don't think police wear. I mean, cops or detectives wear that stuff anymore.
The problem is that they didn't pay attention to the costumery. And other things, sets weren't quite right. I mean, it was a tribute to Hitchcock. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do it properly,
but then
don't do it
again,
at all.
Mike, weren't we just saying earlier that the Psycho movies 2, 3, and 4 one weren't they a tribute to the first Psycho
but
2?
they didn't try to copy the first movie.
True.
Like you could do. Like you're making a movie. You made a movie and you're editing it now called Attack of the Cat People. If you did another movie, which is like a spin-off or a bit of a follow-on type thing, it's not quite the same thing as copying it and redoing it. You see? Or if somebody else said, I like what Sarah did, I'm going to do something similar. It's not quite the same as doing a copy. They've copied it. If you're going to copy it, it's got to be as good as, or if not better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with the idea of if you change things about it, like
but
change a bit of
they changed the
dialogue,
wrong bits.
maybe if, I mean,
They got the costumes wrong. They got other things wrong. They changed. They said I'm going to stick to the original. Then they changed a few things as well.
and then they put in the wrong music.
Yeah,
They put even the spine-chilling Psycho theme music all over the place.
Too much. They overdid it. They overdid the music terribly.
Even where at the end when it's supposed to be a talking scene,
the music
they throw it in music when you actually should listen to the actual person talking.
You can hardly hear them. Yeah. There's little things. They made so many mistakes in it. So if we do that one, I'm not going to give it a good grade.
Yeah, well, as I said before, I'm going to drag Mike and probably tie him to his chair if I can to watch that one, okay?
I want an ice cream and some popcorn, okay?
Yes, well, I'll try to get into that soon. So anyway, thanks for listening to this podcast, guys. So until next time, keep watching your favorite movies, and we'll try to make our absolute sure to review them all for you.
Hey, by the way, somebody sent a contact to Sarah through Facebook or something recently saying I'm not funny enough, or we're not humorous enough. I'm not going to make humour where I don't need to make humour. If there's something funny, yes, I'll make light of it. But if I'm doing a serious movie, and I'm not a troll. I'm not going to make light of a movie if someone's done a really good movie. I'll throw some funny bits in, or I won't throw them in, depending on the movie and depending on the review. Okay.
Yeah,
there you
go. We're made to not rip into a movie.
I will not rip into a movie at the expense of me getting a few laughs. I'm not a troll. Never have been, never will be. I appreciate movies for what they are. If there's something funny in it, I can get a few laughs out of. I'll make it funny. But I'm not going to do it at the expense of the director or the actors or the writers. Okay? So, yeah, I respect them. How's that? Sound good?
Quite right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all you listeners who are listening and reviewing, listen to all these reviews and you like them, fine. Thank you for listening, and please let Sarah know that you're listening and whether you like them or not. Any feedback's good.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, guys. Till next time. This is Sarah Stephenson
And Mike Stephenson.
saying, see you around.
Goodbye, folks.